Good evening, everyone. I will now call to order the October 14th, 2024 Town of Kill Devil Hills Board of Commissioners meeting. I invite everyone to please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we enter into our moment of silence, let us all take a moment to keep those affected by storms in western North Carolina and surrounding areas, along with those impacted in Florida, in our thoughts and prayers. Some of our KDH family have also experienced loss recently, and our hearts go out to them. Please join me in a moment of silence. All right. Our next item of business is our agenda approval. We have an agenda before us, board.
Mayor, move that we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion of approval and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we have an agenda. All right, next item is public comments. Tonight's meeting is a little bit special as we have our traditional public comment at this part of the meeting. After we get through all our business, we'll have our biannual public forum a little bit later to close the meeting out, where it's a little more informal of a process. People can come up and speak with the board, but it's not the 3 minutes for comments and then later have the board reply. It's more of an open discussion, so we can talk about anything anybody wishes at that point as well. That being said, has anybody signed up for public comment this evening? No, sir. All right. The floor is open for anybody who'd like to make a comment at this point.
Hello again. Nice to see you all. My name is Julie Owens Robinson, and I own a historic landmark cottage in Kill Devil Hills. I'm here tonight to commend the commissioners and the planning department for considering the approval of new regulations for the massive special event houses that are so prevalent in Kill Devil Hills. Two sayings come to mind. The first is too little, too late, because our family and many others like us have already been negatively impacted by these monstrous structures and the issues that come with them. But I guess more importantly is the saying, better late than never, because hopefully by approving these regulations, other property owners will not have to deal with some of these issues associated with these huge houses. I would like to address some of the regulations being considered in hopes that you will approve them. First, changing the designation from a single-family dwelling to a special use, large single-family dwelling is a start, but calling these houses a single-family anything just seems like a misnomer. The definition of a single-family dwelling, according to the Kill Devil Hills Code of Ordinances, states a detached building other than a mobile home designed for or occupied exclusively by one family. I don't know about you, but I don't know a single family that needs 16 to 36 bedrooms and 2 commercial dumpsters to take care of their trash. These structures are really not built for single families. They are special event houses and should be treated as such. A better name might be large special use houses. The recommendation to change the regulations on parking is very important. This is a safety issue. Any house with over 11 bedrooms should have an access aisle, regardless of setbacks. We saw the 18-bedroom house at 2033 South Virginia Dare Trail burn in 2021. My family watched in horror as flames quickly engulfed the house, catching the cars in the driveway on fire as well. It was a miracle that no one died as a result of that fire. Sprinkler systems should be required in all of these large houses, and now many have them, but there are exceptions. And according to the fire marshal, these systems are designed for egress only. In the case of a fire, there's no way for guests to get their cars out of the driveway in time. The parking plan proposed for the large house that's going to be built next to our old house shows 16 cars, 3 cars across, 5 cars deep, with no access lane. This is a disaster waiting to happen. There will be no way for any type of emergency vehicle to access the house. The exemption for an additional 2 feet of setback makes no sense to me. How will 2 feet help when there's an emergency? I hope you will approve these recommendations to do away with the exemption, to require access lanes for all of these large houses, increase the setbacks, and require sprinkler systems without exception. It is also dangerous for these cars to be backing out of the driveway onto Highway 12. I believe the parking areas are designed for small cars and sedans, yet many visitors drive large pickup trucks and SUVs. There's no room for them to turn around. We have watched as the cars at the 24-bedroom house next door try to turn around to get out of the parking area. And this is a very high-density population area with many pedestrians. Even with the access aisle, they had to back onto the highway. This is dangerous for the guests, the pedestrians, adjacent property owners, and others. I'm happy to see that you're looking at this and also at density issues as well as you update these regulations. Improving the aesthetics of the parking area is also a good idea, but you also need to look at improving the aesthetics on the east side of these houses. The plan for the house being built beside us includes a pool deck, a covered pool deck, mid-level deck, tiki bar with covered deck, walkway, and open deck. Now they want to add an intermediate deck, radius bridge to the tiki deck, and change the open deck to a covered gazebo. I'm not kidding. This huge amount of construction on the east side of the house detracts from the natural beauty on the dunes and oceanside. It obstructs the views and blocks prevailing breezes. It's excessive and unnecessary, and I hope you will consider regulating that as well. The best recommendation by far is to require a public hearing for large special use dwellings. It gives the public an opportunity to express concerns on specific sites before applications are approved. It allows you to enforce regulations as needed to protect the public, and it shows that you all are making safety and comfort of visitors and property owners a priority. So I thank you for letting me speak, and I thank you for considering these new regulations.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak at this public comment period? Jack, right ahead.
You can now see what happens to old cyclists. Jack McCombs, 3118 Bay Drive, KDH. I have another item I'd like to discuss, but in the second, more informal session. The first thing I want to talk about now is e-bikes. I feel like I'm beating a horse, but this horse is not dead. Constantly, I have friends and neighbors complaining about them. Today, I was out in the front yard, and an e-bike came by on the multi-use path. He was doing at least 25 miles an hour. There's accidents and severe injuries just waiting to happen, and inevitably, it is going to happen. This is not, I've talked to you about this before. It's not solely a Kill Devil Hills municipal problem. It's a problem that has to be addressed by all the local governments. So whatever rules and regulations are proposed, it fits all the towns and the county. What I'm really worried about is cyclists approaching from the rear of walkers, many walkers with children and with dogs, never giving an alert to the pedestrian that they're going to come by. And you have a bike coming by you at 20 plus miles an hour. It's a pretty frightening situation. So I'm really pleading with you to come up with a set of laws, perhaps start with a speed limit of 10 miles an hour on a multi-use path. But we need a set of laws to govern behavior on these. And we need an educational effort to teach people how to properly ride these bicycles. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
McCombs.
Jack.
Sir.
Anybody else like to speak in the first public vote?
Good evening. I'm Donna Creef. I'm the Government Affairs Director for the Outer Banks Association of Realtors, and I just want to make one quick suggestion as you try to craft these rules for the large special homes that the previous speaker just spoke about. She mentioned a public hearing, and if these are going to be transitioned to a special use permit, I think it might be worth the time to put some qualifiers in there so that the public understands that they're quasi-judicial proceedings and that they affect differently than your legislative decisions, and that even though it's a special use permit, that it's a permitted use still, and that it's not a denial. That's just a suggestion, and I know Meredith knows that, but the general public usually doesn't understand that distinction. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Tom Stewart, and I just wanted to quickly address the 5 points that are coming up tonight as far as large homes. I work for Resort Realty, so I'm in property management, so I'm a little bit biased to some degree, although we don't have a lot of those larger homes. We do represent owners who have some. We also represent owners who have smaller homes and who have made investments and have made plans to one day potentially build a larger home or see something like that go in its place. And they're basing a lot of their decisions about that on the current value of that property, and that property's value is based on its ability to sustain a large home. And we can see that Kill Devil Hills, those lots can sustain larger homes. And then we have owners who are looking to multi-generational and say, this is our retirement nest egg. And the way we look at it, just glancing at the surface and comparing lot prices between lots with restrictions and lots without, is you're looking at potentially knocking 30% of a property's value just like that overnight. And not by doing all of these things, but by doing any single one of these things could have an impact. Anecdotally, and I do appreciate comments very well thought out, and I don't disagree in entirety. I'm not the kind of guy who would take my family to a 24-bedroom house. That's not my cup of tea. But having said that, I am a big believer in property rights, and I do believe that that there is a need for the larger homes. And I think that if we look back the last 4 years and coming out of COVID, I see this a lot, and even the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau said what we had seen was unsustainable, and maybe that's part of it. And I just don't want us to react to our recent experience, which is it's been overcrowded, it's been a burden to be here. I live here, can't go out to eat, can't get anything done, can't get my oil changed, but I can now. And I think if we look at what's happening now, this is going back to a truly seasonal market. And I think our business owners and operators are going to begin to feel the pain of not having 10, 11, 12 months of continuous business like they've had for the last 3 years. Truly going to be seasonal, and we do need to maximize what we can do. I know that might not be a popular opinion with many, but I live here also, and I have to deal with those things, but I also employ a lot of people, and I know there's lots of businesses that rely on that income, and to kind of knock that out during the peak periods doesn't make sense to me from a real estate and property management perspective. So, and I appreciate the thought and everything. I hope that we'll take our time. People might say, well, this has been going on for years, but in reality, this has really been going on since June, where these changes have really come up, and there's been a big groundswell for this. But I think it merits a little more look-see and discussion with the owners and get their input as well, especially the ones who own smaller homes and might have different plans in the future. I don't disagree with sprinkler systems. I think they should be in every house that's larger than in size TBD. I'm a big fan of that. Ask our fire marshal, fire chiefs. They'll say the same thing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak at this public comment period? All right, seeing no takers, we can move on to response to public comment. Anyone from the board like to respond? I think seeing so much of this public comment was in regards to ongoing business. Number one, we might as well just move on right along with our agenda. That said, the next item we have ongoing business. Item number one, regulatory options, Ocean Impact Residential Zone, review density and development issues. Meredith and Cameron, I'll turn it over to y'all.
All right. Good evening, everybody. What we're talking about tonight is a single-family dwellings analysis in the ocean impact zone. This is based off of the September meeting and the discussion we had there for regulatory options for some of the issues that have been brought up with large single-family dwellings, especially in the ocean front. So what we did today was bring you some tangible examples for what those regulatory options would do, and also what we have, in our existing stock and what that looks like from a standpoint of lot size, density, all those factors. So we'll get into that. Moving along, it is important to look back at the past a little bit. Most recently in 2020, we talked about this topic, but at a joint work session with the planning board to talk about some of the concerns that there were with large homes. And as a result of that, the town did adopt several regulations that were really directed at large homes. And I'm going to go through these really quick. And that was for landscaping and stormwater management to be required for any lots or homes that were bigger than 6,000 square feet. This was important based off of some of the effects of noise, light, visual aesthetic for landscaping purposes. And then also there was a concern with a lot of these highly dense, sites had a lot of runoff, and there was concern for stormwater management. So those are being addressed as of 2020. There was additionally the increase of a side yard setback for large single-family dwellings over 6,000 square feet, unless there was a fire suppression system installed. Going back to some of the comments about fire suppression, what we found out during that joint work session period is it's really extensive to get a fire prevention code that requires houses in Kill Devil Hills to have sprinklers. It would mean you can't put a size limitation on it. If you think houses need sprinklers, they all need them. So that's something we would be having on our 900 square foot beach boxes all the way up to the big houses you see on the ocean front. We couldn't do that just in the oceanfront area. So just to address that. But that's been fairly successful, especially on the 50-foot wide lots, because they already are, pretty reined in by side yard setbacks. So that was done in 2020 as well. And then we also created a new category for parking. And this was homes with 11 bedrooms or greater. And this was included all the regulations of the other sized homes, which was parking space size, layout, turnaround, the general design standards. But it also included the push for trying to get an unobstructed drive aisle to the house. This was, you could take the drive aisle, or you would get an additional side yard setback on the side of that parking area. And then as of more recently, it wasn't 2020, but we did adopt dune protection regulations to address some of the concerns of some of the items that were being constructed on the ocean front that the state may have thought was okay through the CAMA regulations, but the town did not feel that they were okay. So really only getting elevated structures in the dunes. And that's also important to look at for what applies to these big houses on the ocean front. More recently in June, you brought this up at your retreat as one of the issues I think you're hearing from your community are these things that we did in 2020 and more recently with dunes really addressing the issues that we're seeing in the community with these large homes. And we're talking just about the ocean impact zone. In September, we did present some options, some regulatory options, and it's what's been discussed tonight. And we're just going to go through those really quickly. This is what was proposed at the time, and it was limit stack parking not to exceed 6 vehicles. This is an attempt to reduce long lines and better emergency access and circulation of these sites. You'll see later on, there's some examples of parking, which kind of speaks to some of those circulation and access issues. Removing the exception and just require the access aisle to the house. I think we've heard that a lot, that during an emergency, you won't be able to get to these homes. They really need an access aisle. So this would remove the exception, and they would just be required for all houses greater than 11 bedrooms. 10% of the total vehicle accommodation area to include landscaping. This is what I would relate to being more like a commercial standard of parking areas having landscape islands at the end of them, trying to break up that large sea of concrete that you sometimes see from the beach road that we're all familiar with. And then we discussed increasing the setback for houses over a designated square footage. This is similar to the commercial requirements. In the commercial zone, if you go up to the maximum height, you have greater side yard setbacks. And then number 5 was designating these large single-family dwellings as a special use in the OIR and defined as a separate use. I will take the time to talk about that just for a quick second. A special use doesn't mean that we can really make any ruling or deny a permit because it seems like it's too much for a site. You would still adopt specific development regulations. And unless there was evidence brought forward at a hearing, you would still be required to approve that application because they meet our rules. So it is permitted as long as it would meet our rules and regulations, unless there was some sort of evidence that was brought to show that they don't meet the rules and regulations. So just wanted to address that. Moving forward, we did have some discussion at the September meeting, and really looking for, looking at those regulatory options. But we also tossed around the idea of floor area ratio and really how that applies to some of our developments for how we regulate density and other uses, but also bringing the board tangible examples of what's out there and what these changes would mean. So what we've done is prepared a presentation to assist in the visualization of the size and bulk of existing large single-family dwellings.
So the next several slides are several examples of some of our larger single-family dwellings. It is not all-encompassing. It's not picked for any specific reason. It's just a sampling to give the board asked for visualization of what we were talking about and what the numbers meant. On each slide, it'll have the year built, the lot size, the lot width, the square footage of the structure, that floor area ratio, the number of bedrooms, the building value, and the cost per square foot. We'll remind you on each one, when you see the year built, if it was built prior to 2020, it does not include any of the regulations that you adopted that include the drive aisles or landscaping or stormwater. So if you look at, these two are at the north end of town, and you'll see the outline. It's identical each time. Year built, lot size, lot width, building, floor area ratio, bedrooms, building value, and the cost per square foot. And this is a 24 bedroom and a 16 bedroom. They are at similar lot sizes. One is a 0.53 floor area ratio and one is a 0.33 floor area ratio. Again, at the north end of town, similar size lots. One's a 24, one's a 22. Their floor area ratios are very similar at 0.43 and 0.48. They're 10,574 square feet and 12,347 square feet. 501B, South Virginia Dare Trail. This was built in 2022. I point this one out because I'd like to point out the lot size. The lot size is over an acre. This is an irregular shaped lot. It's pie shaped. The lot width at the road is 30 feet. It balloons out to about 150 as it gets closer to the ocean. The building is 19,827 square feet. It's got a 0.41 ratio. It's got 36 bedrooms. It, I think to date, might be the largest house in Dare County right now. But I point out the lot size because we get a lot of questions. The board gets a lot of questions about why does Kill Devil Hills have the big houses? We have very large lots on our ocean front. They're very deep, and some are very wide. So I point that out just to show that we have the land to accommodate some of these larger structures. The one next to it is a 0.55 ratio. It is 11,210 square feet and 20 bedrooms. These two houses are both on 50-foot wide lots, and they are similar square footage. Number of bedrooms varies by 2. That's just a design thing. But if you look at the floor area ratio, you notice the lot that's larger, the 29,834 square foot lot, has a 0.35 ratio, where the slightly smaller lot, 21,802 square feet, has a 0.49 floor area ratio. It's a ratio of the amount of land and how much gross floor area property has, how much you can squeeze on there. And it really varies wildly. The next two I put in here because they're 75-foot wide lots. You see a much different design when you have the wider lots, and they're 28 and 30 bedrooms. They're 0.36 and 0.47 floor area ratio. And then the board also addressed a lot of parking we talked to several of your options dealt with parking, stacked parking, landscape areas, the drive aisles. And so these are simply layouts. These layouts can change based on regulations. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to change how many bedrooms. But for visualization purposes, we wanted to give you some examples of some of the parking areas in the houses that you just looked at. This is a 23 space parking area. It has a maximum of 7 stack spaces, a minimum of 5 stacks. There's no access aisle. It's a pre-access aisle exemption. It was before the regulations. If you look at it, you really only have one vehicle that has unimpeded egress out of this property. And Ms. Robinson is correct. It probably would be onto NC 12. This is 21 parking spaces. The maximum stack is 10. The minimum stack is 5. There's no access aisle. It's pre-access aisle exemption. You'll notice that only 2 vehicles really have unimpeded egress, and they could do a turnaround and exit the property. However, this works on paper. This particular parking, probably you would not be able to physically park like this, but for the purposes of our regulation, it does meet our ordinance. This is an 18 space. Maximum stack is 5 or 11 if you consider egress access. No access aisle, pre-access aisle exemption. We put this one in here because if you eliminate the 5 stacks, you've got the side park, what do we call it? Side load parking. And it has landscape islands already installed on them. It's pre-ordinance, but without the 5 stacks, that's kind of what we've been talking about is limiting the number of stacks, allowing people to be able to more like a commercial parking lot than the large stacks that you see. This is 22 parking spaces. The maximum is 8 stacks. It does have an access aisle provided, and 3 cars are unimpeded. This is 30 parking spaces. It is 6 aisles of 5 cars stacked. No access aisle, pre-access aisle exemption. That's a lot of concrete. Each space is 10 by 20, so it's 200 square feet. So you're looking at 30 spaces with no breaks in any of the concrete. This is 37 parking spaces. This is the 501B. It's maximum stack of 8 vehicles. However, only 3 of the 37 have unobstructed egress. There's no access aisle. It was done after access aisles were incentivized, but they chose to take the 2-foot additional setback to not put an access aisle in. So that's 37 parking spaces.
So y'all don't get tired of hearing one voice. We're going to keep breaking this up. So getting back to what's the issue. We talked about this a lot. Going back to 2020, this has been a pretty constant issue that we've been talking about. And the 2 things that the board has previously stated is the safety and then the bulk. So safety is that the structure is being considered single family with limited egress and emergency access. And then the bulk of the structure. And this is the aesthetics. These are your big, long sheer walls that you see when you're a neighboring property owner or anywhere in town, east to west. And then these large parking areas that Meredith also just spoke about. And it's before we go any further, a couple things that we do just want to put out there for considerations. Fiscal considerations. So willingness to sacrifice the future tax revenue of the lots by limiting bulk and density of single family dwellings in the OIR. I want to stress future tax revenue because all of the big homes that are out there now, they're still there. They're going to be there even after this presentation is over. So we're talking future tax revenue. And a lot of, times we've talked about is how many lots are out there that could be developed. And that's a really hard number to put on because there's a lot of properties out there that have got 4, 6, 8, 10 bedroom houses. And even more recently, we saw a house from 2008, a 10 bedroom house get torn down to build a 24. So redevelopment, really anywhere that's within our district that has availability to central sewer, there's a lot of lots out there, 50-foot wide lots, 75-foot wide lots. There's a lot of pre-platted lots out there. So there's quite a bit of lots that could be affected.
So, me again, I'm gonna have to go back to the parking for just 1 second. I will tell you that the parking that we showed you, I said it wasn't realistic and it's not how people actually park. And that's probably the what you're seeing happening in the parking in our beach accesses, because people are not going to park like that. They're going to find a unobstructed way to get in and out of these houses if they can. So, possible ordinance changes. The first recommendation staff has is to create a definition for large single-family dwellings. I think Ms. Robinson actually read our single-family dwelling definition. And this would be in addition to that. It would be a distinction for large single-family dwellings. We would make it for structures over 6,000 square feet to be consistent with the square footage we used in our stormwater and landscaping regulations. Staff would recommend requiring an emergency access lane on all large structures over 11 bedrooms. Currently, it's an incentive. And then finally, we would recommend setting a floor area ratio for large single-family structures located in the ocean impact zone. This differentiates the smaller dwellings and long-term houses from the large oceanfront dwellings used primarily for rental income generator. The definition will allow the regulations to be applied specifically to the concerns of the board. An explanation of floor area ratio, which I feel like I probably should have started with, so sorry to the audience for that. Floor area ratio is an excellent tool for making house size proportional to the lot of which they're located. Floor area ratio controls bulk by creating a specific ratio of the land to the structure's gross floor area. Gross floor area is heated space. It doesn't include decks. It doesn't include pools. It doesn't include open walkways. It is only the heated area. So, for example, a floor area ratio is established at a 0.30. The total lot size will be multiplied by 0.30, and that will be the total allowable gross floor area for heated space. Simple example, 10,000 square foot lot with a 0.30 floor area ratio, you could build a 3,000 square foot house, gross floor area or heated space. That can be vertically, that can be horizontally, that can be any number of stories, any design, but no more than 3,000 square feet. So that's how floor area ratio works. To address the bulk of large single-family dwellings, staffs recommend implementing a floor area ratio as it's done for hotel, motel, and multifamily in the OIR. Not only in the OIR, but we also use it in the commercial zone, the light industrial zone. So it has been a very effective tool that the town already uses in almost all of our zoning districts. However, because structures are located on a narrow lot and are not commercial buildings, staff recommends a more conservative floor area ratio be applied if bulk and mass are the elements the board desires to address. We would recommend a tiered approach similar to that of commercial structures. The current floor area ratio for multifamily cluster homes and cottage courts and hotel development is 0.4, which can be increased to 0.45 with additional 2-foot side yard setback, or 0.5 with an additional setback and a dedicated 5-foot public easement on the side of the property. Staff is recommending a lower floor area ratio for large single-family dwellings because they're residential is a less use than commercial, and they have significantly less design regulations and building code requirements. Commercial requires no stacked parking, multiple egresses, ADA compliance, sprinklers, and residential is just simply does not have nearly the requirements or the safety requirements that commercial does. So we would recommend a more conservative floor area ratio. Staff recommends considering the following approach, and it will also address some of the parking issues that we've discussed. Set a floor area ratio for large single-family dwellings at 0.25 with the following options to increase, up to 0.30. If stacked parking is limited to 4 vehicles per stack, and up to 3.5 if side yard setbacks are increased 2 feet on each side, as well as the limited stacked parking. This is in addition to our recommendation that access aisle be required for all large single-family dwellings.
All right, I'm going to walk you through just some examples of that within that ratio that we recommended previously from 0.25 to 0.35. 1527, this is going to be the same format as the houses you saw earlier for just giving you some statistics on these property. 1527 North Virginia Trail, this was built in 2009, and it's a 75-foot wide lot. Same with 1111 North Virginia Trail, also 75-foot lot. They're both, 0.31 and 0.33. What you'll see is one of the big differences is 1527 is a 9-bedroom home, where 1111 is a 24-bedroom home. Primary difference is 1527 is actually somebody's primary residence, where 1111 is a rental. Going to the south end of town, this is here just south of the Cavalier. 701 South Virginia Trail, this is a 0.36 floor area ratio with 18 bedrooms. Next door to it at 703, same year built. This is a 0.25 floor area ratio that's got 12 bedrooms. So just showing you what's out there in this range. Going south a little further, 1301 South Virginia Trail. This is next to Atlantic Street Beach Access, built in 2015, 50-foot wide lot. This is a 0.34, so the upper end of that recommended range, and that's a 15-bedroom home. We're at 1201. You've got a 0.27 floor area ratio with 10 bedrooms. So just showing you how the proportionality of the lot varies depending on lot size and what you really try and put on it. And there's one more for you to look at, and this is 911 South Virginia Trail, and this was built in 2014, and this is a 0.36 floor area ratio that has 15 bedrooms. Now we're going to look at some existing square footages and alternative floor area ratio square footages. What we did is bring you back some of the examples of earlier. These two were of the higher end of density for your floor area ratios, and we took it from a little bit more of a conservative than we recommend, 0.20, all the way to 0.4 for a proposed FAR and what those would mean to these properties. 0.40 is the baseline for our commercial properties, or for your multifamily, even your cottage courts and cluster homes. But just showing what that would do to some of these properties that are already there. Going to look at a 75-foot wide, or really a much larger lot on the left at 501B. As Mayor said earlier, this is one of the largest, if not the largest home in Dare County. And this is what those floor area ratios would mean for a property of that size. So the baseline being 0.25, you're looking at it still about a 10,500 square foot house. Moving south from here, this is a 50-foot wide lot, and this is at 2023 South Virginia Trail, 0.49 floor area ratio, so considered fairly dense. And those are the floor area ratios that would apply to that, going from 0.2 to 0.4.
In conclusion, if the Board of Commissioners desires to further regulate the bulk and address the safety of large single-family dwellings in the OIR, staff would recommend using a combination of floor area ratio, required access aisle, and limited stacked parking. Floor area ratio will create proportionality of the structure to the lot. Requiring an access aisle will result in a safer development. Staff recommends the board direct staff to develop amendments as presented and start the zoning amendment process with the planning board to get additional input. We'll be happy to answer any questions, and we stand ready to take board direction.
Thank you very much, and very, very nice work on a detailed and comprehensive presentation. Everybody probably needs to take a breath if they're listening to all that information. I feel like, but thank you. Very nice work, and I'll open it up to the board for comments and questions.
Well, it seems relative and fair to me. Kind of resets the definition of what is a large home back to the early 2000s, really. But it's relative. It's not an arbitrary number. I like it.
I like it too, and I really appreciate staff putting so much time into it and getting us to a place where we can really make an impact. And I think one of the things I do want to mention that that I know we hear. In fact, we just got an email this week. In addition to the bulk of the properties is the density on the beach.
Mhm.
And I think as we look at redevelopment of some of these whatever's left, that's what this is going to impact. And that is, to me, almost even bigger than the structures. Safety, of course, is at the top, but even more than the aesthetics is the density that we're creating on the beach. I have people, like I said, we got an email from Barbara Hoagland this week, and I have people tell me all the time that these, 20, 30 bedroom houses, those people are on the beach. And I don't know if you've seen any drone footage of Kill Hills, and I tried to find it. Remember seeing some over the summer. These 20 and 30 bedroom houses are putting up the pop-up tents, and they're not just putting up 1 or 2, they're putting up 10 or 12. And people over and over and time again tell me they come to the beach, they live in Kettleville Hills, they work in Kettleville Hills, and they go to the beach and they can't find a parking spot because these homes are overflowing into the accesses, and B, if they can find a parking spot, they can't find a place to sit because the beach is so dense. So I think for me, that this addresses that. And also, to be clear, these are not going to be small homes. At these ratios, they're still pretty large homes. They're just proportional, in my opinion.
I'm gonna take a little bit of a different twist. I first want to comment on this board and tell you how much I think that your commitment to address this issue is to be applauded. You've not backed up an inch, and you've gone right straight ahead trying to address it. And then the second comment I want to make is to staff. Excellent presentation. I think they've turned over every stone and dotted all the I's and crossed the T's. So I'm proud of that. My first and foremost thought out of this whole process is access aisle for emergency equipment. We got to have that. I mean, it's at any cost, it's got to be there. We've got to be able to get emergency equipment in there if there's a problem. And secondly, designation of a special use for large single family in the OIR. I think that needs to happen too. I do have a question probably for council. Is any of this going to create a situation where there's a down zoning liability for the town?
No idea. No, I'm just playing. I was there for the meeting today, and it always starting statutes. And as we all know, 160D came along not too long ago, at least. There was a specific section and some changes to down zoning. The definition, not so much, but however, down zoning is defined by our general legislature. There's 2 ways in which a zoning ordinance, if you will, can amount to down zoning. One is by reducing the permitted uses of land that are specified in a zoning ordinance to less or fewer uses than were previously allowed. Well, we're not restricting the use of the property. It can still be used for residential purposes. So we don't, that rung doesn't even come into play. The other is by decreasing the development density of the land to be less dense than was allowed under previous usage. Now, again, these are simply defining the term down zoning. The real change came, or at least in 160D, the real change to the down zoning regulations was that no neighboring property can make a petition for a zoning text amendment that down zones another's property. Okay, so it makes sense. If you're going to go out and you're going to try to down zone across an entire zoning district, then you need all owners. If it's a citizen submitted amendment, then you need all the owners to consent. However, the statute does specifically say this, of course, doesn't apply if the down zoning amendment is initiated by the local government. So the statute in and of itself confirms that yeah, I mean, a local government can propose something that involves downzoning. Now, we also have, as we discussed before, and as Meredith has confirmed with David Owens, who issued an opinion to the town of Kitty Hawk concerning the statutory regulation of bulk and the statutory allowance to regulate bulk. His opinion, of course, is that what we're proposing here, it is regulating bulk and that we're entitled to do that. And as far as case law is concerned, I couldn't find a lot out there actually, but there was a case, Gregory v. County of Harnett, which was a 1997 Court of Appeals case, and it involved downzoning. And in this particular case, it was actually restricting uses. It was taking uses that were once allowed and then removing them from that zoning district. But the same principle is going to apply. And the reason the court struck down that downzoning ordinance was that, this is a quote from the case, there was no evidence in the record showing that the commissioners considered the character of the land, the comprehensive land use plan, or the existence of reasonable circumstances justifying the rezoning application, the ordinance amendment. I've listened to you guys deliberate. I don't know how many meetings we've had this at now, but quite a few. Without a doubt, you certainly considered the existence of reasonable circumstances, which in your mind and by your vote would justify this, assuming that it's the way you vote. So no, I've got no fears. Lawyers can shut up. That's just a long way of saying I've got no fears that this is downzoning or illegal downzoning. And if it's your pleasure, I think you're entitled to consider this proposal by staff.
Thank you, sir. As always, you're prepared.
Try to. Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much. Then the last question I have is, will this, and this would be for planning, is this going to create or increase nonconformities?
It will,
It will.
absolutely.
But with a non-conforming use, we
But-
can still rebuild.
So our nonconformities ordinance, if a nonconformity is destroyed by a natural disaster, fire, or something that they didn't tear it down, our ordinance allows it to be built back 100% of what it was prior to
Okay.
the disaster. And then our 50% rule applies on single family dwellings, but it's 50% of the value. They either have to do an addition or repairs at 50% of the value. And if you look at these large houses, that's going to be in the millions of dollars for a repair or an addition. And most of them are maxed out on their property. I had a question for you. You mentioned special use. Is you're in favor?
Well, what you're proposing as far as the,
Separating these,
yeah, Yeah,
Not
I might have
creating a
misspoke,
special
yeah.
use. Okay.
differentiating the
Correct.
single family dwelling.
I wanted to make
versus
sure I
large.
understood when.
yeah,
was
I
writing my
probably misspoke on that, but
That's okay.
that's what I meant. That's all I have, Mayor.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I think that helps because we, in making these decisions as a layperson, we need to understand the numbers and what exactly the effect is on producing and using that ratio. And I still, even though I've had the presentation and have, still feel somewhat nervous about, or trepidation about picking a number, what I'm saying? Because the effect is large. It goes from 20% to 30, as you listed, the ratio of 0.2 to 0.3, 0.4, all the way up to 0.4. Big difference in the property, a big difference in the square footage you can build. So, in coming up with a proper number, I see recommendations. I would be personally more inclined to be more on the 0.4 side as a restriction of 0.45 even. And I think that's will be the question, that's the question. I mean, because we all agree on the safety, at least I think we all agree on the safety as far as commissioners. I'm not speaking for anybody, but it being our maybe our main concern and one that's valid. and sit and that aisle, creating that aisle will help that. That just seems like common sense to me. Going forward, that's something we should do. I think. I know you broke down the ratios and the size of a home you could build with those different ratios on that last slide. I don't know how that plays in addition. I don't think while showing that, you're showing also in addition to that what's going to happen if we take the other recommendations of limiting stack parking and the access aisle. So it's going to have even more of an effect, I assume. Then you've showed us the different ratios, but if we also have the access aisle and the stack parking restrictions, it's even going to be more constricting on what you can build, I assume, right? So those numbers aren't. They're not including those two other restrictions.
It would be a design. They would change their design.
Yeah, but the design is going to be limited in their design.
It would be limited that they couldn't stack parking like we showed you earlier.
Right. So there's going to be additional limitations beyond just the square footage. It's going to also be limited based on the lot size, having to have this access aisle, and having no stack parking or only a limit of 4 stack parking spots. Right. All those proposals together are going to be used as a whole. It's not
Well, our first tier doesn't limit stacked parking at all. So at the 0.5, you would have no stacked parking limitations. If the board chooses to, the access aisle will be required if it's over 11 bedrooms. If it's not over 11 bedrooms, it also won't be required for that. But at the lowest tier, there'll be no restriction on stacked parking or anything like that. It's only if you want to have more or can have more bulk, then there will be additional restrictions.
Okay, all I'm asking is your breakdown there that you broke down. If we can go back to the last slide, can you do that? When you break down 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, that's just talking about floor area ratio. That's not including the additional restriction of that will also affect square footage of what you could build, the access aisle and the stacked parking limitation, correct? Like this is just math here. You're running the numbers. I'm just saying this does not also include what's going to also affect square footage, which is also the access aisle, correct? I mean, the design alone the design limitations alone are also going to affect square footage of what you can build, correct?
I don't think I can answer that because I'm not a designer.
Well,
I mean, designers have uncanny ability to be able to change their design. I don't know what they'll be able to accomplish. It will be different.
Limiting.
I can't answer that specifically because I don't know how it would be designed. I can't. They might park underneath. They might.
I think we've we've kind of all seen how designers can maximize. I mean, obviously that's why we're here.
I mean, it could potentially be limiting, but it doesn't I can't necessarily say with any type of finality that yes, it will, because I'm not a designer and I don't know how they can. They have.
It just seems to me that what I'm asking is it seems fairly clear. These numbers here. With the design changes that they're also going to have to deal with, it's going to all three of these changes that we're about to make here. The effect is going to be greater than just reducing the floor area ratio. It's going to be reduced even further by having to have
I think that if you had a floor area ratio of 0.25 on 501B. And it was a 10,500 square foot house, there's going to be very little additional effect from parking or access aisles because the house is going to be almost 10,000 square feet smaller.
Right.
So no, I actually don't think the parking, because the house itself through floor area ratio will be smaller. So there'll actually be more room to accommodate the parking requirements that we're trying to address for safety purposes. So if you lost 10,000 square foot of house there, I don't think that the parking access aisle would be an issue.
Well, they're gonna have to get space from somewhere for the access aisle. Correct. All right. So no, I mean, and that's important to me because when we're looking at these numbers, you can see obviously these houses are going to be, they're not going to be built at that size if we put these restrictions in. Obviously, I'm more of the property rights side, like Mr. Stewart, property owners' rights in that. What we do here is going to affect the value of their homes, like you said, overnight. It is very true. And in value of homes of people with cottages that haven't sold yet, So, it's a legit responsibility that we have here. And it's all about the number to me, the number we pick, and I know it's not arbitrary. I know they put thought into it. I know that's, been done. But in the end, we're the ones going to put this to the public, and what number are we going to put to the public is the question. It does matter. It is going to affect, what's going on. So I think at least for me, we all agree, safety aisle, something that needs to be done, right? On a baseline. These homes, people don't ever stack their cars like that unless they have a wedding or something at the house, from what I've seen. But, because they, like you said, they park practically, and maybe they are figuring out other places to park their cars. 37 bedroom house doesn't have 37 cars usually. I guess it could have 37.
I think they
separate
usually
families.
have more.
But you got children that don't drive, and you got homes. So I don't think they have that many cars. But the stacked limitations, I don't have a real feeling about that, to be honest. But I do have a feeling about the access lane. I do agree with you on that. We've talked about that for years now, and I think that's important. I ask everybody else here, the number is the details is what's important, and this number is what's going to come down to. I think we all want to do something to limit this. Just what's the number? What's the right number? So that's all.
All right. I'll make my comments short and sweet. We've talked a lot about how this could impact the value of a home from Mr. Stewart up here on the board. And I think about, what about that person's neighbors? What about Julie Robinson sitting back here? And the people who have to live next to these things, and the quality of life that they're forced to sacrifice. I think what we're discussing tonight is a chance to kind of level that playing field to something that it was more in line to what people had in mind for our oceanfront 20 years ago. And I think that's a reset button that needs to be hit. I would, if the board we have consensus to move this forward for a formal process, I could let the planning board and the staff consider all four of those options. As for the 0.2, 0.25, 0.3, and the recommendation was 0.25, 0.3, 0.35, but maybe more incentive could be given to either make it a little more restrictive, a little more smaller, concise, or give more for people who do the right things. But overall, I'm in support. I'm happy to see that we've come to this point, and I'm excited to see what's going to come out of this process. So, looking around up and down this board, how does the board feel about giving a green light for starting this process formally?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I'm good to go.
I think we have consensus and can, move this forward to the next steps.
Mhm.
All right. Anything else for ongoing business item number 1? Hearing none, we can move on to new business item number 1, street improvement recommendation, 2025-26 fiscal year and 2026-27 fiscal year plan.
Good evening. I'm Patrick Lewis with American Engineering, Mr. Mayor and Board of Commissioners and town staff. I'm here tonight to discuss the results of the, the SISBC committee that had a meeting on the 23rd of September. And I want to make it for the record that that committee has a number of citizens on it, as well as staff and a representative from the board. And it's a true amalgamation of everyone within the community to come up with the right solutions to help move the town forward. Out of the meeting, there were 2 recommendations for fiscal year 25 and 26 to talk about the two projects briefly. The fall project would be a West Martin Street from US 158 to 9th Avenue, would be pavement reconstruction along with a widening at the intersection with 158 to accommodate better traffic flow. There would be sidewalk in that project to include additional sidewalk if grant funding is approved that the town is applying for, and also some stormwater improvements in that section. The spring project would be a mill and fill of Ocean Acres Drive from Gunnis to Burns. It is totally a street project. There is no projected water or stormwater improvements. Along with those two projects, I wanted to point out that the diligent work of the town through the SISPC and the board support, even through high levels of inflation when project costs have gone up, have caused since 2017, 6.4 miles of poorly rated streets to now be down to 3.2 miles of poorly rated streets. In addition to that, through fiscal year 25 and 26, another 1.2 miles of those streets will be removed from the inventory with these two projects. The total dollar value of the projects is $1.498 million. And while that may sound like a lot of money, it's a very good investment to get more of these streets out of the inventory so that we can focus in the very near future on resurfacing only of streets that have aged instead of having to reconstruct those streets. There were some recommendations for 2026 and beyond. Project for First Street, East First Street and West First Street. Again, next year we will take a look at where things are and see if that still fits within the budget. But the report has a number of other projects that are inside that can be brought up to the at-bat position or the on-deck position at any time. Pending any questions, I'd like to conclude that part of the presentation.
I have one question. Why is there no drainage improvements proposed for Ocean Acres?
There are no drainage improvements for Ocean Acres because the drainage improvements were done on prior work, and that area does not have flooding and does not see the need for drainage improvement. All of the water mains were done at a different time, so we can go in and just resurface the street and go on from there.
I've been over to a couple residence area off of the Ocean Acres Drive, and they've got a lot of flooding.
Okay.
So I was just curious why there was no drainage.
Okay, I'd like to talk with you, Commissioner Gray, after
Sure.
the meeting, and I'll
That'd be
find out
fine.
where they are. We'll take a look into that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or discussion on this plan? All right. My papers are all up. It's here, but
Got a mess.
Ready for a motion?
I'll take a motion if we're
I'll
ready to
make a
make one.
motion to approve the 2025-2026 fiscal year project street improvement recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? I would just like to add, I believe for the Martin Street project, a large portion of it is a grant application.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. The board, by consensus, authorized staff to apply for that with the Visitors Bureau,
Mhm.
and that was done. And we're keeping our fingers crossed. And just for clarification, Mayor Ingram and Mr. Ingram and Mr. Gray, that was to approve it as presented.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Exciting stuff. All right, moving on to new business item number 2. We have quite a few appointments to work on this evening. First is an opening on our planning board. I'll open the floor up for nominations or discussion if we'd like to fill that vacancy.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Billy Dorn, Senior, on the planning board.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'll just say that I've got to work with Billy a long time on the Community Appearance Commission. He's a good fella and hardworking volunteer in our town. Right, hearing nothing else, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, Billy. Next, we have a position for the Historic Landmarks Commission. See here that Tony Dorn's term expires this month, and she's expressed a desire for reappointment. Any discussion?
Move to reappoint.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Congratulations, Mrs. Dorn. All right. Item number 2, point C, we have 4 positions open on the Community Appearance Commission. 2 folks have indicated they would like to be reappointed, and we have 2 vacancies. I'm happy to open it up for discussion.
I'd like to nominate Amy Scarborough for
Amy
one of the
Scarborough.
positions.
All right. Any other nominations? So we can,
Maria Hester for the second,
Maria Hester.
and then the reappointments.
Yes, and I know Jennifer Albanese and Sue Kelly have expressed interest in being reappointed as well. Commissioner Gregg, would you mind amending your motion to include all 4 people?
That's fine. I will amend that as a motion.
All right, second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you to everybody serving and loud. Yes. Item number D, Coastal Resources Advisory Council. I'd like to look back and thank this board for giving me the opportunity to serve on the CREC. It was very, very informative and interesting to be on that kind of a state level of service and see all kind of the geographical, political tug of war that goes on when you get to that stage. But my time has come to an end, and I'd like to nominate Mayor Pro Tem Ivy Ingram for, I guess this is not an appointment, but just a nomination to be considered for appointment at the CRC. I think Ivy would do a wonderful job representing our town and contributing to that board.
Second.
And I'm excited for you. We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that will probably go in their November quarterly meeting as an agenda item, hopefully for appointment. But it takes, since it'll be quarterly, it takes a little bit longer than to conduct
We would need
business.
to send the name in by the November 1st.
I said it should go on there. Okay, very nice. Good. All right, we got through it. Next item of business is committee reports. Any committee reports this evening?
Not here.
No?
Yes, sir.
Then we will move on to commissioner's agenda. Anything?
Nothing for me, sir.
None for me, sir.
I just wanted to thank Sandy. The historic landmark was wonderful. I didn't get to your house. My daughter and I saw a couple of them and then had to rush to the homecoming parade. But I so appreciate you and your work with that. And it was wonderful to see the video and to see how many people were in this room, and staff. Thank you so much for making that happen. It was really cool. Some really neat houses and a really cool way to protect the history in the town.
Absolutely. To piggyback off that, the video was great, and I did come to your house, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I even took a picture of the ceiling. I love it. Absolutely.
Anything else under commissioner's agenda?
I just want to say I went to the splash pad with dog event. That was fun. As they do that every year. That's always neat. My dog loves it, of course, in his second year doing it. But thank you for putting that on. I enjoy that and all you do for the 4-legged friends we have out here in Kill Devil Hills.
Great. All right. Moving on to mayor's agenda. I do have 3 resolutions to bring to the board this evening. The first resolution in support of reinstitution an area of environmental concern destination for Jockey's Ridge State Park. I know that it's been a big cause of concern throughout Dare County in North Carolina, and I'd really like for our town to add our names to the list of people who want to see that designation return to that site. Second is a proclamation honoring North Carolina veterans and active members in Operation Green Light. And third is a proclamation that Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month. That said, I'd like to make a motion to we adopt all 3 of those proclamations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, board. Some other items to share. The fire department's open house was back on last week on October 8th. Chief, home run like always. My children are and boys and Cub Scouts, so open houses at the fire department are a family affair. No one leaves hungry. Everybody leaves happy. And we take full advantage of that public event. So thank you, sir. It was really great. And it was a nice chance to showcase our new building and new facility. It was it's big. You can spread a lot of people out in there, and it was a great time. Dog Day at the Splash Pad, just like Commissioner McAvoy shared that he was there with your folks and your pups, and it was a great, really cool event. So it's nice to be able to share that, kind of close out the season at the Splash Pad with our furry friends, not just our children. So very nice. Sandy, thank you again. I'll take credit for touring your beautiful home. It has a lot of charm and a lot of character, and thank you and everybody for participating in that program. And for folks, when you leave tonight, you look across our frog pond, we have a breast cancer awareness ribbon in Aviation Park. Now that it's dark, it's really visible, and it's a nice touch that our staff is acknowledging that. Sandy, you're getting a lot of credit today. Early voting starts this week. This space is about to drastically change. If you didn't know already, we have election in a few weeks. The town has again volunteered our town hall meeting room, which we're in now, to serve as a site for early voting for all voters in Dare County. Early voting will begin this Thursday, October 13th. 17th, my mistake. 8 in the morning to 7:30 p.m. weekdays, and then on Saturday, November 2nd, which is the only Saturday for early voting, 8 a.m. to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And Sandy will lead her team, as she always does so well, to convert this space and turning it into a voting sanctuary for all. Thank you so much. It's tough work and long days. Last piece I have for Mayor's agenda is I want to acknowledge a member of the Kill Devil Hill staff, Marty Shaw. Marty is a level 3 building inspector here in town, and he volunteered and has been deployed to Black Mountain, North Carolina, as a team leader doing damage assessment in that part of the state. And we are very proud of Marty for answering the call and helping the folks in the western part of our state that need it. And we're proud of it. So we need to make sure we recognize that when he gets back.
And I'll toot my other building inspectors' horns. They've all registered to volunteer for damage assessment and reconstruction. Marty got called up first, and we definitely appreciate him going. But our other building inspectors have also put their name on the list. Don't know if they'll get called up too, but I think Marty will be there till the end of this week, and then he may get redeployed. Apparently he's doing a real good job. They like him.
Wow.
There, so.
But they have to send it back.
They have to send it. They can't keep him. No.
Well, we're, as a board, I know we're really proud of Marty and anybody else, and I feel bad for the other building inspectors have to pick up that extra workload. So everybody's making sacrifices. Moving on to our town manager's agenda. Town attorney's agenda? All right, consent agenda.
Yes, sir. On the consent agenda, we have the September minutes from September 9th, 2024 meeting, the August 2024 monthly report, recommended resolution authorizing the sale of unclaimed and found property. The approval of the consent agenda will record the board's authorization for staff to dispose of this property through sale with proper notice, including the execution of the resolution authorizing the sale of unclaimed found property and public notice of found and unclaimed property distribution in accordance with the requirement of North Carolina general statutes. Schedule public hearings. The first one is a zoning amendment request. It's for accessory dwelling units, modify accessory dwelling units site requirement. Would recommend that public hearing be set for Monday, November the 18th at 6 p.m. And then the next two public hearings would be for historical landmark designations, would be for the same Monday, November the 18th at 6 p.m. The first one is a historical designation for 2025 Newbern Street, the Harris Blanchard Cottage, and C is 606 North Memorial Boulevard, Diane Baum Cottage. Staff recommends approval of the consent agenda as presented, and a motion would be in order.
One comment before action on the consent agenda. looking at the monthly report, if I've calculated correctly, the fire department's had over a 22% increase in the total number of incidents. We've not added any firefighters, have we?
No.
What concerns me with the fire department is I've also learned or have been told that there's a decrease in volunteers. If we could have some sort of announcement that, you know, we're always willing, and you maybe already do this, to accept volunteers. But at some particular point in time, we're going to have to address, you know, you can't keep having increases like that with the same amount of people. I mean, it's, you know, we need to talk about that at a budget session or something to that effect. I just want to raise that flag to the board. Chief, great job y'all are doing. We appreciate it. And, you know, as always, staff shines well, Debbie, and in large part by your leadership. That's all. Motion to approve the consent agenda is presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Consent agenda is approved.
Thank you very much. I will point out that the board did authorize, and we are in the process of a staffing study.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That we will have that information for
That'll be a
the
good time to
budget.
discuss it. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I'd forgotten about that. Thank you.
All right. Our Board of Commissioners is committed to our citizens and getting feedback. We set aside 2 public forums a year, which is slightly different than our public comment periods at our regular meetings. The public forum gives the board an opportunity to speak casually with the public on issues raised on the floor. Exchanges will not be timed, however, everyone will be heard. I reserve the right to wrap up the topic, move on to the next one. Anyone wishing to speak should stand, give their name and address for the record of the meeting. No decisions will be made during the forum, but the board may assign issues to other town boards or committees or staff for additional review. At this point in time, I'm happy to move on to our public forum, and it looks like we got a taker. So, Jack, if you'd like to, I know you mentioned earlier you'd like to speak again. The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to sit down too.
Be my guest.
In 2021, I learned by reading an Air Force publication that Air Force plans to make a rise from the Wright Brothers Memorial to the Air Force Memorial. And since I was an avid cyclist, I've been racing a lot, now paying the dividends of this practice. I contacted the people that were planning to do this, and I said, what have you done so far? Well, we haven't contacted the Park Service. And I said, how about Kill Devil Hills? Well, who do we contact there? So I said, I volunteer to help you. So I was out in the town running some errands, and I ran into Commissioner Gray. And I told him about this. I said, I'm not quite sure what to do for this first step. And he said, go to Debbie. And I immediately went to Debbie because I knew that if you wanted to know anything about the Outer Banks, you would go to Debbie because she's an encyclopedia. And as long as I'm on this side of the grass, I don't want you to retire.
Exactly.
Debbie created an entree for me with the Park Service. And she also had a meeting in her office with Deputy Chief Harris, who is here, and who has become a key part of this. Debbie was there, her deputy was there, and Officer Clark, I believe at that time, was in charge of traffic control. Well, it took off, and all the planning came together. The Air Force had 80 cyclists that first year. The Air Force made it plain to all the jurisdictions between here and Chesapeake that what we were going to do, what the route was, and we asked for the help of the police department And of course, the first police department is Kill Devil Hills. Everything went smoothly. The very next year, we planned it again, but instead of 80 cyclists, we had 100. This year in September, we had 202 cyclists start. Now, the Air Force cycling team's plan is to build this up to an event that will have at least 10,000 cyclists. I'm very confident that that's going to happen. Every hotel space that is available will be filled. And for that reason, I really think it's time to bring the tourist board up to date on what has happened and what is planned to happen. I think that they have a vital mission to help with this, because the economic benefit to the Outer Banks is going to amount to what I believe will be millions of dollars. Last year, with 100 cyclists, the economic benefits to Virginia and to North Carolina was $219,000. That was only with 100 cyclists. You can imagine the benefit with 10,000 cyclists. I think, Commissioner Gray, you are a member of.
I'm on it.
Well, any help you would like, I'll provide it.
Thank you.
Okay, just call me.
Okay.
Uh,
First one on the list.
The 2024 M2M had something very different. For the first time, a significant person in the Outer Bank addressed all the cyclists. That was our good mayor. When he first texted me and asked, should he give a small talk before we start, I said, I don't think there's time, because the Air Force plans these things minute by minute by minute. I didn't think there was any time in that budget for that. But in my reply to him, I included my boss, who was a general officer. And he says, oh, yes. He says, if the mayor wants to talk to us, we will make time in the budget. And Mayor Windley had some really good comments, and it was well appreciated.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you. You're the first personality, significant personality.
I assure you, there were plenty of significant personalities present at the M2M ride, and thank you for inviting me and including me. And I was real proud to be there. And it was a beautiful morning, and it was a flyover over the memorial. It couldn't have gone better. So we were excited
Well, actually,
to be.
Mayor, there were supposed to be 2 F-15s that accompanied that tanker at low level. But because of the situation in the Mideast, those 2 F-15s were deployed, and they were no longer available.
Well, we understand they have things to do that are important as well. So thank you, Jack. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks for bringing this to Kill Devil Hills, letting us host this. We're thrilled to have this opportunity. We're proud of it. And, it's a good thing.
I just think Kill Devil Hills led the effort in the Outer Banks to make this a success. And of course, this lady right here is a major factor for that.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. McCombs? You're good?
Now, were you going to make any comments about e-bikes?
E-bikes. Well, yeah, we've talked about that. Similar to large homes on the oceanfront is a difficult subject that we have discussed at length. I know AC, I've sent quite a few emails through to the police department, and are you comfortable? And I hate putting you in the spot, but talking about how the state classifies electric bicycles compared to traditional pedestrian bicycles. And that's kind of what we can see.
That's that guy.
Well,
Yeah.
the e-bikes, electric bikes, by state law, state definition, are classified as a regular bike. And under definition, it classifies as a regular bike. So you can't take them off the sidewalk without taking the bicycles off the sidewalk. And that's we can obtain policy code. We can stop somebody from being reckless on the sidewalk. So it'd be hard to enforce a particular speed, but if they go over 20 mile an hour, then they become more or less a moped or motorcycle. Faster it goes by motor. They can make it go faster by pedaling it, but just by motor. So we can help on that, but it's hard to enforce speeding on the sidewalk. But we are out there watching them. We do what we can, but if you say take them off the sidewalk or multi-use path at this point.
Yeah, the state classification of the e-bike is the same as a traditional pedestrian bike
Yes.
has been the challenge that we're trying to work around. We were not in a position to supersede state law. But to your point about education and efforts, teaching bikers, street etiquette and how to alert people when they're coming up on them may be the place where we can start making more ground. We can't make knuckleheads stop being knuckleheads, but we can at least try to educate folks on good pedestrian safety behavior.
Well, it seems to me then, and I'll volunteer to this, we need to go to Raleigh and raise this at the state level.
That's a fair point, because I think this is a statewide issue. It's just not just Outer Banks, it's everywhere, and they proliferated so quickly that it's, you mentioned waiting for someone to get hurt. People are getting hurt.
Yeah.
I know of accidents that are, life-threatening on these things. People aren't wearing helmets, they're going too fast, and 20 mile an hour, you fall head first. You're in Jesus' hands at that point. So, it is serious. People are getting injuries, and a lot of children are riding these things.
Yeah.
So maybe an organized effort to go to Raleigh and get our General Assembly involved is the next step to go.
Is it possible for us to contact the School of Government and see if there's other municipality or the League of Municipalities to see if there's if other municipalities are having this issue and what they're doing about it, and if we can band together through them?
Vehicle statute does not apply to public the multi-use path, so it's not a road or highway. So it's not like, I don't think moreover, I'm not sure you're in charge of regulating the public use path either, right? I'm not sure. I would think probably not having to police that. So, I mean, the definition of vehicle or motor vehicle, it doesn't really matter when it comes to the public. I don't, as a lawyer, I don't think it has anything to do with the public, the multi-use path that we're talking about. If we're talking about Bajai's path, if we're talking about sidewalks, obviously they have no use. Anything over 15 miles an hour, whether it's pedaled or not, probably has no interest being, whether it's a scooter, man operated or electrical, probably have no use being on those paths, because obviously it's dangerous and you come up on somebody real quick, and people have leashes and baby strollers and all those other things on those paths. So I think we could put signage up that would say, I don't think anybody would challenge it or anything. I think it'd be unlawful in any way. Put up a sign that says, hey, no e-bikes on this path,
You
because
put a sign that says no motorized vehicles.
Yeah, well, right, but it's not. I don't know if it's technically. I mean, it is motorized, but it's not the definition of a motor vehicle or motor vehicle. So maybe that's confusing. But I think you could probably say no e-bikes or even the e-scooters are 15 over 15 sometimes.
I don't want it to sound like I'm against e-bikes.
Yeah,
I certainly am not.
fine.
I think it's a really good, healthy things that people have done it. It's the speed that really concerns me.
And the
I really
place.
am not in favor of taking a multi-use path.
Yeah. Well, I have an e-bike. I know exactly how they work now, because I didn't really know last time you came, and now I do. My son got one, and I understand, how you can pedal it, and then how you can have assist at different levels. It's very complex. It'd be kind of complex to probably write the statute that would be in order to regulate it. But it's going to be the way of the future. You're not just seeing kids, you're seeing older people ride these, because it's a way to get around, maybe do a little cycling, but also, obviously get around quick. And this is a perfect place for it. You can run to the store, you can run to the pizza place, whatever it is, it's the Outer Banks and Kill Devil Hills specifically is perfect for it. So you're going to see more and more and more and more and more and more. There's not even any limit. And they belong on the road, in my opinion. You know, just like anybody who's cycling 20 or more belongs on the road, you know?
I think Charlene has a comment.
I just wanted to mention that the town did put together an e-bike safety video.
Mhm.
It's about 5 months ago, and you can go on YouTube and find it, but we did put it out there for folks to view as well.
That's good because I told my son, I said, you know, you're basically operating like a motorcycle. You really are supposed to be on the road. You need to follow the rules of the road. If you're over 20 miles over the speed limit, now he doesn't ever taken driver's ed yet. He's a kid, right? So he doesn't even know the rules of the road, right?
Mhm.
But that's the problem we're having. They're basically operating, they're basically operating a vehicle for all intents and purposes, not defined by the state, on the road. So it's even on the road, it's a problem because, now you have to obey the stop signs, stop lights, yield, whatever it may be. And obviously they all need to have helmets over 20. I mean, that's just anybody over 20 without a helmet
It's dangerous.
needs to have their head checked, literally. So, there's a lot of education that needs to keep going, but the kids, they need to be running these things on the road, and the road is what they know nothing about. Just by their parents.
And they're
driving,
not on
their parents
the road.
driving them around, but that's about it. They don't know. They haven't been taught the rules of the road yet, so it's a problem.
Jack, are you good? Anything else you want to bring forward tonight? I'd like to open the forum up to anybody else who'd like to speak. Remember, name and address and any topic that you'd like to discuss. We're happy to hear you.
I just wanted to say, Julie Robinson again, thank you. Thank you all for the in-depth presentation and the hard work you've done to come up with options that will, I think, make Kill Devil Hills a better place. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Tom?
Friendly, nice, welcoming. Just the way you all work together, I'm gonna walk out of here. I may not get what I want. Doesn't matter. It's good to see democracy in process. It's good feeling. I would say to Mr. McAvoy, I think the question about the compounding effect of five items and the FAR should be looked at. I don't know the biggest house on the beach is the best gauge. Most of the lots I think that are out there, but aside from that, we'll see where that goes, and wherever it goes, but I can't wait to come back and vote here.
Thank you.
I'm no longer a proper Delano Hills resident. I'm an incorporated there now, Meredith Crockett. I'm a river involving harbor now, just recently moved. I just want to thank you for really looking at the structures on the beach, because as a wedding photographer, I go to these houses. They're not event homes, and they're maxing the parking. I'm parking on the street. It's a huge safety. Oh, don't tell the rental company we're having a wedding here. All the things.
Yeah.
Even family, big family events, they have more cars. 10-bedroom house, they have 22 cars. It's ridiculous. Everyone drives separately. They don't know how to drive together. So I think safety is huge. I'm really glad you guys are, looking into it and trying to do something about it. I understand property rights and values, but at what point do we say it's not about the money, it's about the safety?
Yeah.
And I think just thank you for considering that.
All right.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Last call. Well, thanks everybody for coming out for our public forum. I'll go ahead and call for the
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
discussion. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Long meeting for us. It's been a long time.
Right?
Mhm. Hour marks is the threshold.
Yep. I got it.
I'll see you later.